The lights in Valencia were bright enough to bleach the truth. But Pedro Acosta didn't flinch. He rolled the KTM into pit lane like a kid walking into a funeral for a dream he hasn't buried yet. Fourth in the race, fourth in the championship, fourth in a season where fourth felt like punishment, not progress. The orange bike hissed under him, metal still hot, tires chewed to misery. It looked less like a factory prototype and more like a diary of everything KTM failed to fix. Acosta pulled the helmet off and looked like someone who'd been told he had to wait another year for his life to begin. 21 years old, and he already feels time slipping through his gloves. That's the insanity. That's the power. That's the danger. Every prodigy hits a moment when they stop believing in fairy tales and start counting the years they can't afford to waste. He arrived in MotoGP to win, not to learn, not to build, not to wait while Ducati eats the grid alive. KTM sold him the dream that he'd be the face of the future. The future didn't show up. Instead, the bike betrayed him in every way it could. Traction gone at the start, grip fading in the middle, tires begging for mercy at the end. A pattern repeated so many times it stopped being a mystery and turned into a diagnosis. KTM cannot finish a fight. The RC16 pulls like a demon for 10 laps, then dies like it ran out of soul. Valencia was the final proof. He fought all race long, slapped the bike into corners, kept himself in the top three, then watched Fabio Di Giannantonio glide past him like Pedro was stuck in quicksand. The bike could offer little resistance. That's the line. That's the truth. A rider who can carve races with surgical precision went helpless while the bike deteriorated beneath him. And afterward, he didn't hide the frustration. "A wasted year of my life," he said. Not said in anger, said in exhaustion. Said by a rider who knows exactly how rare momentum is. Said by a rider who knows the window to shock the world doesn't stay open forever. Said by a rider who sees Marc Marquez lifting the title on the same grid where KTM kept telling him to wait. The season gave him consistency but stole his destiny. The grid sees it. Rivals whisper it. KTM fears it. So the question becomes, when the most talented 21-year-old in the sport looks into the cameras and calls your entire year a waste, is that the first crack or the final warning? Comment what you think. It didn't start in Valencia. The fracture lines were visible from the first tests in Sepang. KTM knew the RC16 had explosive one-lap potential. They also knew it couldn't hold pace when the race burned long. Tire drop was lethal. Mid-corner stability vanished the moment the fuel load dropped. Rear grip evaporated like a secret no one wanted to acknowledge. And that's the one place you cannot lie to a rider like Acosta, because he is not a normal rookie. He is not a slow learner. He is the predator who doesn't enjoy the thrill of the chase unless the kill is guaranteed. And every weekend, KTM kept putting him in a position where he had to work miracles with machinery that couldn't even maintain its own strengths. By mid-season, he stopped crashing. He refined everything. Throttle control smoother, corner entry tighter, race reading sharper. He became exactly what KTM needed him to be. The bike never returned the favor. The worst part is this: Acosta's growth masked KTM's decline. His consistency in the second half of the season wasn't because the bike improved. It was because he figured out how to bleed slower than the others. Look at the chronos. Look at the drop-off. Look at the average race pace differential after lap 14. KTM didn't find solutions. They found a prodigy who was good enough to disguise the flaws. Inside the garage, they felt it too. Pit Bearer's face said more in silence than KTM's press releases did in paragraphs. They know they're losing the political fight in the paddock. Acosta is a generational prospect. And generational prospects don't wait for factories that move like committees instead of killers. Neil Hodgson said it straight. If KTM want him to stay, they need to bring something special. Special never arrived. Meanwhile, Ducati played the game like warlords. Marc Marquez took the title with 5 rounds to spare. Alex Marquez finished second overall. Aldeguer won in Mandalika on a bike Acosta keeps staring at like a prophecy of what could be. Pecco Bagnaia collapsed under the GP25, but even in collapse, Ducati learned more than KTM did in success. And the grid felt Acosta's frustration. He is too open, too honest, too impatient to pretend. Every podium he missed by late race fade added another page to the story KTM doesn't want to read. He didn't sign into MotoGP to fight for respectable fourth places. He signed up to break the sport. And KTM knows damn well they cannot compete with Ducati's gravitational pull. Acosta talking like this at 21 is not immaturity. It is clarity. The greats hate wasted years more than broken bones. Rossi always said a season without a title chance is a season that steals from your youth. Marquez rode with the desperation of someone who knew his peak could be stolen at any moment. Lorenzo refused to waste time on a project that wouldn't crown him. Acosta entered that club this year. Not champions in statistics, but champions in mentality. And KTM isn't matching that mentality. So here's the burning thought. When a rider becomes bigger than the factory ceiling, who breaks first? The team or the talent? Now here's the real psychological grenade. Marc Marquez told media that Acosta can fight for the 2026 title. Marc doesn't speak casually. He speaks when something is possible. But how does Acosta take that? Motivation or pressure KTM cannot meet? Because the truth is savage. If Marquez thinks you can fight him in 2026 and you're stuck on a bike that can't match Ducati, how long before you look across the paddock and ask yourself why you're not the one wearing red? Did the race expose the bike or did it expose the philosophy? A wasted year of my life. Riders don't say things like that lightly. Not in public. Not at 21. Not when the factory expects loyalty. This wasn't a meltdown. It was a declaration. Acosta didn't come to MotoGP to be trained. He didn't come to grow slowly. He came to win. KTM promised they would match his ambition. Instead, they handed him a bike that forces him to ride like a monk just to survive full race distance. KTM's collapse is multi-layered. Engineering bottleneck. Updates arrived late and solved almost nothing. Tire deg unsolved. Michelin construction punishes the RC16 more than others. Aero mismatch. KTM's aero philosophy gives speed early, instability late. Ride height inconsistencies. Deployment not as adaptive as Ducati's. Electronics. Mid-race torque maps still less refined than Aprilia's. These issues don't just hurt performance, they crush belief. Acosta has been told for 2 years, we are close. Close to what? Ducati is winning titles with 2 different riders. Aprilia is winning races. Gresini is developing talent faster than KTM's factory. Even VR46 is a podium threat on a year-old Ducati. Meanwhile, KTM cannot give the most explosive talent in a decade 1 race win. That's not a learning curve. That's sabotage by stagnation. The psychological collapse was visible the moment Acosta said he didn't come here to finish 4th in the standings. That line cut deeper than any criticism of the bike. That line said, "You're not matching me." And when a rider starts believing they're more ambitious than the factory, the end is already forming. KTM invested everything in him. He is their crown jewel. Losing him would break more than their lineup. It would break their identity. They built the junior system around finding the next Acosta. They found him. They might lose him. That's collapse. And the bigger question is the worst one. Does Acosta feel this team has already given him everything it can? Because once a rider believes the ceiling has been reached, no engineer can convince him otherwise. So here's the bridge to the final truth. Is KTM at risk of becoming the factory that developed a legend only for another team to harvest the glory? The verdict does not need poetry. It needs precision. Pedro Acosta is too big for KTM's current level. Not in ego, in ability, in clarity, in urgency. He sees the sport differently than KTM builds motorcycles. He evolves faster than they engineer. He adapts quicker than they upgrade. And he refuses to waste time pretending 4th place is progress. His comments in Valencia weren't random. They were a coded message. He will not let his peak years depend on yearly promises. KTM can still keep him, but only if they deliver a motorcycle that can outrun Ducati over 27 laps. Not in sprints, not for 10 laps, over the full war. And that's the piece that should terrify them. Ducati already knows he wants to win now. Aprilia sees the frustration. Even Yamaha sees the psychological opening. Factories smell opportunity like sharks smell blood. Acosta is saying, I won't waste my 20s waiting for your evolution. And history shows riders like him always choose the machine that matches their ambition. Lorenzo chose Yamaha over mediocrity. Marquez chose Ducati over nostalgia. Quartararo will choose 2027 machinery over loyalty. Acosta will choose the bike that gives him championships, not patience. So we circle back to the hooks, the questions, the threads. Was 2025 really a wasted year? Yes, because KTM didn't give him the weapon he deserved. Did he grow? Absolutely. More than the bike did, more than the team did. Is he losing faith? He said it out loud. Can KTM afford to lose him? No, not even close. Will he stay if 2026 begins the same way 2025 ended? Impossible. The season didn't just expose KTM's technical weakness. It exposed their philosophical one. They are moving at a pace meant for riders who want to learn. Acosta wants to conquer. And now the final question falls on the paddock like a hammer. If KTM cannot match Pedro Acosta's speed, hunger, and evolution in 2026, why would he give them 2027?